McCullough, Chief Marketing Officer of VFM Leonardo, and welcome to the VTV channel. VTV is a weekly series of interviews with industry experts on the latest topics in travel e-business and specifically online merchandising practices that help hoteliers extract more value out of their online presence. As always, we encourage you to email us at vtv@vfmleonardo.com to suggest topics that you would like us to cover in future episodes. Today I'm joined by Richard Wiegmann, the Managing Director of Trust International. Trust services more than 60 hotel chains globally with web and GDS distribution technology and reservation services. Prior to joining Trust International, Richard held executive positions within Travelport, which was the former owner of Trust, Amadeus, Bertelsmann, and DER. Richard, thank you for joining us and welcome to VTV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our topic today, Richard, is driving demand in a recovering market. Certainly, 2009 was a year that many hoteliers would like to forget. In fact, I think the economic reality of 2009 was many of them, and particularly those of them in the e-business part of the business, really had to hunker down and weren't looking towards any kind of expansion. But times are turning, and certainly you have brought up some suggestions on that topic. And most recently at the Head in the Spring conference in May of 2009, you spoke about what hoteliers can do to prepare for the economic upturn, stating that the next upturn will only be realized by those that are already preparing for it. In their predictions for 2010, analysts estimate that 2010 would be less bad than 2009. So what we're interested in today is to get your insights into what can hoteliers, and particularly those involved in the e-business side of marketing hotels, what is your opinion on how the industry is recovering so far and what hoteliers can do to prepare for the upturn?
Well, I mean, if you would have asked me before Friday, April 16th, I would have said that the first month of 2010 are really looking promising in terms of reservations, and we are very, very optimistic for the next month. With the volcano disruptions last week creating major problems for the travel industry, we at least had to hold our breath. But I think we've been lucky. And today, sitting here, I'm able to report that the flight cancellations have affected hotel reservation patterns to a lesser extent than one might expect it. So I'm happy to report that the positive trend with increasing booking results seems to continue. In terms of average room rate, there is still a lot of work to do compared to what we've seen in 2008. And I think the average room rates will discover and develop slower than the overall number of reservations. Based on a recent survey we've done with Deloitte, and it was published at the beginning of 2010, Deloitte said that the economic recovery overall will likely weak for the next 2 years. So the bottom line is that even after the general economic recovers, the business environment will most likely contain challenges for the hospitality companies, and challenges that were not that present at mid-decade. And some of the issues facing the industry on several marketing and sales actions are so important to the success of most hospitality companies that should be considered as a response to these difficult times.
Right. Certainly when we have difficult times like we have had, the balance of power, if you will, typically changes from the seller to the buyer. And that means that the buyer is probably a little bit more cautious and a little bit more heavy on the research on what they're going to purchase. How do you think the recession has impacted how people research and buy travel in the online space?
Well, it definitely has changed. I think economy in general, whether it's good or bad, makes travel more precious. During the recession, most companies reevaluated the travel and expenses they spent for travel very carefully and did cut the travel budgets. And it is completely different how corporate travelers as well as leisure travelers are buying travel today. A good 2 years ago, only 2 years ago, we saw corporate travelers going to their travel agencies, going to their intranets and booking travel based on their corporate rates. today those corporate travelers are shoppers. They're going to the websites, they're going to the meta search sites, and they are looking, what kind of deal do I get, even if I'm a big company. And this kind of setup, this kind of profile was only normal for small and medium-sized enterprises. So everybody is looking completely different at travel today on the corporate side. On the private travel side, on the leisure travel side, definitely people are buying different than they were buying definitely 10 years ago, and it differs a little bit from continent to continent. For instance, in Europe, where for many, many years the traditional tour operator business was big, but today we see a lot of those leisure travelers moving onto online channels as well. And they're looking for price, they're comparing the sites, and finally the hoteliers have to understand that the trip of the customer, the travel of the customer, does not start on the day they go into the hotel. It actually starts on the day they visit the website and want to do research.
Yeah, and it's interesting because certainly we have seen through our experiences that those activities that a travel shopper used to depend on others for. In your conversation, we're talking about tour operators, but if you also think about travel agents, where we would used to go to them and say, "Can you find me some places to stay and things to do in a particular city that we want to travel to?" They're actually travel shoppers are actually doing that online themselves now. And I think I'm hearing from you that that's not only happening in the leisure side of the business now, it's also starting to happen a little bit more predominantly in the corporate side of the business as well.
That's correct. I mean, again, since we've been in 2009, and since we've seen the first signs of recessions, definitely even the large corporates are booking travel differently, and the suppliers and us supporting the suppliers have to make sure that they have the right tools and the right functionality in order to support such demand patterns.
Right. So, as a hotelier, given that travel shoppers have changed the way that they fundamentally shop for travel because of the online space, what are those types of initiatives that I should be focused on in order to drive demand and attract current and future travelers?
Well, I think there are many things hoteliers have to do, many things that hoteliers should do, and very few hoteliers do it right today, I unfortunately have to say. Well, I think the first one and most important one is that you got to understand your consumer expectations and needs. Hoteliers must finally recognize what drives the customers to stay at their places. What kind of qualities and interests characterize the travel shopper they're trying to reach? Is it a business traveler? Is it a business woman? Is it a family on holiday? And I think this is kind of the very first step hoteliers have to take. Following that, obviously, you got to provide the kinds of experiences demanded today by travelers. So understanding the needs of a woman traveling alone, for instance, is completely different, or it is different, I have to say, than a man traveling alone. A family traveling with kids has completely different requirements than any other business traveler or a honeymoon couple, and the hoteliers got to make sure that those services are available, not just on property, but also on the website or at any other point of sale. Then rich media. This is supporting all of this. Meaningful videos, meaningful photo galleries. And I'm saying meaningful. I think we've seen photos everywhere. We've seen videos everywhere. But what kind of quality do they very often have? I mean meaningful videos and photos. And not only the hotels outside and some various room types and views by supporting the decision and then making the process, or expect the customer to make the process. It just doesn't happen. It has to be meaningful, it has to be good, and then the customer will book the room. And then you got to go on to other channels. I mean, years and years ago, as you've just said, we were going into the travel agency and we were booking. Then everybody was talking about the web, and some people still call the web new technology. It is many years old. It is not new technology. What is new is mobile technology. And mobile is not only good for research, it's only good for booking. It depends definitely on the country, because the usability of such mobile technology devices is a lot better in Asia, for instance, than it is in Europe. But definitely mobile technology, at least for the research, but later on also for the booking, this is what the hoteliers have to make available in order to meet the demands of the customer. And finally, social media, I think, is a very important point. The Customers are believing other customers. We've all learned that. Some hoteliers learned it the hard way over the past years. So you got to make sure that you incorporate the social media in all of your marketing strategies. You got to make sure to talk positively about your property. You got to make sure to react on time in case there are any kind of complaints about your property. Get engaged and make sure that all of this really targets also the customers you want to address and you want to have in your property. And then finally, please make relevant content available for the different generation of travelers. What we're seeing at the moment, at least on the leisure side, is that the average leisure customer is getting older and they're having different requirements. And again, as I've talked about requirements for women traveling alone, for men traveling alone, or for families traveling, definitely senior citizens have other demands as well. And again, those features should be made available on the website or again, on any other point of sale.
Richard, great. Thank you very much for your insights and joining us on VTV today. It was wonderful to hear your thoughts and learn from you on what hoteliers can do to take advantage of a recovering market in the online space.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
To all the viewers out there, be sure to post your comments on this episode of VTV and subscribe to our feed to receive more valuable insights from industry experts.